Morning, Haggis Basher. Can you hear me? Good morning, Mini Minion. Can you guys hear me? Thank you, Mini Minion. Can you guys hear me? I know I got bright sunshine behind me. Thumbs up if you can hear me. Cool, thanks. Okay, I'm going to turn me back off. So I'm already on the call for the Chicago Police Safety Meeting. And I am trying I'm using OBS. Oh, thank you, Amy. Good morning. Good morning, Haggish Basser. Good morning, Minion. Good morning, Amy. In a New York voice. Sorry, Minnie, that always cracks me up when I hear you guys. Eastern voices, Eastern accents. So it doesn't start till 11, and I may have to run to the door here in just a second or two. Morning, TN Treasure. I'm going to go to their website to see if we can go to the city clerk. Try city clerk. And see if they have the link on there yet. They do not have the link on there yet. But I'm going to leave it on here and see. Amy, you do have a mixed accent. So I said I switched from StreamYard to OBS. Nothing like 11th hour figuring it out. It was really weird because on StreamYard I'd have to show the video and then play the video on my phone and put my phone up near the microphone all at the same time so that way you could hear what was going on. It was crazy nuts. And I haven't figured out how to fix that. So OBS, at least you can hear the video. Yeah, I'm ready, Amy. I've got 2 minutes and 50 seconds laid out on paper. I've been practicing. Oh, I do. Even after all these meetings, I still get nervous. That is for sure. How are you guys doing this morning? And with this new OBS system, I don't know how to chat. Oh, here it is. I just put the message in. That's not what I wanted to do. No, stay there. Oh, yeah, baking sourdough and doing payroll. Haggis, do you own a business? There, TN Treasure, there is, but what it was doing is on StreamYard, it was muting any audio. Yeah, oh, okay. I used to do that as a add-on income. Used to do bookkeeping and taxes as an add-on. Let's see if they've got the link open yet. Refresh. Nope. It's going to be quiet in here for just a second or two, you guys, while I finish getting everything ready. So if you don't hear me, talk amongst yourselves. I promise I'm still here. In fact, I will be right back. I'm pretty sure Wendy was going to try and call in, and I don't know if Nance got her request in soon enough. She might just be listening. This is definitely a weird system for public comment. Of course, it's Chicago. They got to be weird, right? Grizz, you don't need to be over here. Go lay down. Go lay down, big guy. Go on. Go lay down. You guys want to see my big guy? Here, Grizz. Come here. Come here, Grizz. Here, Grizz. Come here. Oh, you can't see him. Come here. Come up here. There he is. There's my big guy. Okay. Go lay down. Did I lose you guys? Are you still there? Amy? Haggis? Did I lose the chat? Okay, thank you, Minnie. Again, this is kind of really a weird, I mean, I've done OBS a long time ago, but I could never really get it figured out. So my son graciously came in here, as I said this morning, 11th hour, trying to figure out how to use it. I kind of like it. It's a little cleaner. Let's see if they've got the link up yet. I guess refreshing would help. Refresh. No. Nope, not yet. If anybody needs a job, they're having the citywide career fair on October 10th. And the full city council is October 9th. Oh, they are starting it now. I know it took a second or two the last time for it to finally pop on here. Probably more evidence of my crappy internet than. Come on. Sorry, you guys. I keep trying to get it to pop in and it's just not. It is being ornery. Okay, let's. Here we go. Can you guys see it? I'm not too sure on the audio, so when the audio starts, I'll have to maybe adjust it a little bit. And as I said, I'm going to be calling in from my phone, so it may be a little wonky, but we'll figure it out. But when the audio starts, I have to shut up. Yep, you see the seal. Yeah, a friend of mine uses OBS for her trading software. She streams her. I, I can make it full screen, but then I lose you. I lose the ability to go back and forth without. I I'm doing really well, TN Treasure, today on just getting it this far. I'm sorry, but we'll figure it out. But I don't want to lose the screen and then lose the ability to come back to OBS. Oh, dagnabbit. Sorry. My technical abilities are just enough to usually get me in trouble. And welcome, Corn Freak. I wish you were there. It would have been cool to have somebody there in person. Maybe maybe Wendy ended up getting there. Hey, Nance. Good morning to you. That always reminds me when I was little, we were in the Rainbow Girls. I can't remember what it was. And every meeting we'd always have to start, good morning to you. Good morning to you. We're all in our places with sunshiny faces. And this is the way to start a new day. I used to sing that to my kids, totally to their dismay because they absolutely hated it. And now it's funny because now they sing it to their kids. It's a box, Mom, it's a box. Yeah, and I have, with this OBS, no idea how to see how many people are in, whether there's 5 of us, 20 of us, 50 of us, 1,000 of us. So we're just winging it today. We'll figure that part out, I guess. Yeah, it wasn't Girl Scouts. It was over in Germany, and as I said, I think it was either the Sunshine Girls or the Rainbow Group. I can't remember. Okay, people, it is after 10. Let's get on the ball. If nothing, I am a early person. I absolutely hate being late. If it, if the time in the schedule says 10 o'clock, it means 10 o'clock, dang it. Minnie, how many cats do you have? Yeah, I'm not a hurry up and wait gal. I mean, if I'm late for something, then there's a reason, and you should probably come looking for me because something happened. Oh my goodness, 5 cats. Well, today, after this, I'll probably um, end the stream, and then there's a surprise one I didn't put on my list. It's at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's the LAPD Commission, and I didn't put that one on there because it's hard enough to try and get a chance to talk. But if too many people call in, it really sucks to try and get to talk. And then at 1 is the city council. Yes, at 1 is city council. 10, 10, 11, 12, 1. And then tonight is the Salt Lake City meeting, and that's at 9 p.m. my time. It's going to be a long day. It's on the calendar for 10 a.m. for that's Central Standard Time because it's 11 here. Do you mean this meeting, TN Treasure? Then yes, it is Central Time, 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time. We're late, we're late, we're late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye. We're late, we're late, we're late. That's Alice in Wonderland, right? Stupid songs pop into my head all the time. TN Treasure Finder. I assume that means Tennessee, right? Did you get hit with any of those storms? Are you over on the east side? Hope all is well. My daughter and my grandbabies live over near Memphis. I need to get down there to see them. As soon as my shoulders heal up a little bit, I'm on my way. Like you, Amy, my daughter's a nurse. I'm so proud of her. Good, I'm glad, Tien. Definitely not. Definitely not the easiest profession, and she took quite a few many years to get her degree. Moving, of course, didn't help from one state to another, but she did it, and she persevered, and is a nurse, labor and delivery nurse. Hey, Nico Yeg. And she absolutely loves helping babies being born. That's where her heart and her passion is. Oh, good. Glad that your son was okay. Yeah, that area got hit pretty hard. Mother Nature can be a bitch, that's for sure. Yeah, the only tough parts is when if the baby doesn't make it or if the mom has a hard delivery. She has a hard time with that because her heart is so into it and she's so passionate. But that is part of life. Life and death are part of life. And it certainly has made her stronger. You know, Amy, you said you were a hospice nurse for a while. That's that's probably extremely hard, but also rewarding because you can help people during a very hard part of their life and their families. I remember the first day of clinical on postpartum and we went to the nursery. We were like, we wanted to hold them all. Yep. I remember up in Anchorage, they had a volunteer position, a baby holder. You could go into the NICU or the ward for the labor and delivery, and you can volunteer to hold and rock babies. Yeah, definitely. Babies are sweet, helpless, and innocent. Oh, we're starting.
Vice Chairman Yancey. Thank you. Alderman Chico. Alderwoman Tabarez. Alderman Cincho Lopez. Alderwoman Fuentes. Alderman Vasquez. Alderman Martin. Alderwoman Haddon. Alderwoman Gutierrez. Absent. Alderman Lopez. Alderman Curtis. Absent. Alderman Taliaferro. Absent. Alderman Spizzano. Absent. Alderman Knudsen. Alderman Gardner. Alderman Hoppenworth. Alderwoman Silverstein. We have a quorum present. We do have some Rule 59 requests. Alderwoman Silverstein, Alderman Spizzato, Alderwoman Mitz as a guest has requested access. Anyone else? Do we have a motion to provide for Rule 59 remote access moved by Alderman Martin? Hearing no objections, so ordered.
Alderman Gardner is via Zoom as well.
Alderman Gardner as well. You are added to the Rule 59 remote participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have written testimony. 12 written statements have been distributed electronically to all committee members, and we have 4 public speakers, followed by a selection of expert witnesses who have been invited to testify. We'll start with the public speakers. You have 3 minutes. Our first public speaker is Kathy Powers.
Good morning. Morning.
Good morning.
On the first day of October, 2024. I'm here to remind everybody that there were 739 excess deaths in the 1995 Chicago heat wave. We have the same number of cooling centers now, 6, and none of them are open 24 hours. Warm nighttime temperatures, especially 80 degrees or warmer, do not allow people to recover from daytime heat. When warm temperatures are combined with high humidity, conditions can become dangerous, if not deadly, even in the middle of the night. without relief from the heat, heat stress can continue to build and increase the risk of heat illnesses and death. There are indications that nights can be more deadly than the daytime heat wave. Humidity usually increases during the overnight hours because as temperature falls, air is less able to hold water molecules as it gets cooler. Systemically, we are not equipped to protect our citizens from excessive heat. Although we have added public spaces like libraries, city colleges, parks, and police departments, the light barrier is the need for 24-hour cooling sites in expanded, accessible community areas. Until a proper city cooling system is built and operated, CTA could provide air-conditioned buses for use as temporary cooling centers. CTA must allow customers to carry on cold water or soft beverages. In any cooling areas, people must not be removed because they fall asleep. This is the body's way to recover from heat stress. Thank you.
The next speaker is Zoe Lee.
Every day y'all change this public speaking thing. So now y'all got the timer on there so nobody can't see us, but that's cool. I know how to edit and stuff like that. Y'all spend $100 million annually a year, probably. Well, that's in the budget for homelessness in the state of Illinois and in Chicago. And you guys come in here and act like y'all are so concerned about the unhoused Chicagoans when there's been a family, I mean, they're not here today, but y'all know Michael Youngbay, his daughter, and his wife that has been trying to get housing for over a year.
Yeah.
And what the fuck? And y'all just don't care. Like y'all sit here in these committees and these meetings and are afraid concerned. I have this video that I'm putting together that has over maybe about 40 black homeless men that are like on every corner. Like I mean homeless. And it's getting worse. And they're right like next to an undocumented immigrant with the candy and the kid right there. So like it shows like this weird situation that we got going on in Chicago that we're supposed to be so fake concerned about the undocumented immigrants and how we have to have dignity and we have to figure out how to get them housing while I'm watching a black man who is homeless talking to himself, American citizen who has no resources, and y'all are sitting in here trying to figure out what y'all gonna do about the extreme weather impact for the unhoused Chicagoans. Like this, like the jokes, they come because there's no way in the world that y'all are concerned. And we know you're not concerned. We know you're definitely not concerned about housing because I've been coming here for a year about illegal eminent domain, and I had to do whatever to finally get notice that this is a real thing. We have a real housing crisis in Chicago. Now y'all are displacing people. Y'all displacing black seniors on the street, but y'all are in here about to act like y'all care about the unhoused Chicagoans when y'all are unhousing people on purpose. That doesn't make any sense. This is the Democratic Party. That's why this city is going to turn red. The state of Illinois is going to flip red for the first time because y'all do not care and y'all need a lesson. Y'all need to be taught a lesson for real because nobody's playing with y'all. It's the people first.
Please add Alderwoman Gutierrez to the roll call for quorum purposes and Vice Mayor Burnett for attendance purposes. The next speaker is Pujan Blink. Pujan Blink, and please set the 3-minute speaker clock.
All right, good morning. Thank you for having me. First off, I'd like to start by just thanking everyone for being here and having the courage to voice your concerns. I'm born and raised here in the city of Chicago, so I know what it's like living here from the day I was born. And I'd just like to share a quick story. Yesterday, I made a great friend in the name of Ronnie. He's a homeless man who lives just south of where you guys are building a new casino. And I just want you guys to know that the homeless people in the city are a great and strong community, just like I know that this city can be. We are a sanctuary city, and I just think that we should all, take that seriously and be a city that we know provides for the people in need, and that includes the homeless people. I'd like to just bring up a point about, and I hope you guys can touch on this during your hearing, about the One System initiative. And what that is you guys have not you guys specifically, but the city of Chicago has closed down migrant centers because they're consolidating a lot of these facilities. So I just want to ask, why are we consolidating these facilities and not repurposing them for the homeless people in the city of Chicago when we know we have the resources and we know we have the people that are willing to step up and provide support? So if you can touch on that during your hearing, I'd really appreciate that. Because I know that money isn't going to solve everything. It's going to take action. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take people willing to go out of, above and beyond and volunteer their time to make these changes in the city. And I just wanted to voice my personal opinion and just make it clear here today that I do volunteer as a citizen of Chicago to do this for free. These are real people out here in these streets. I pushed Ronnie about a mile to his camp because he wasn't sure he was going to make it that day, and I found him sitting on a corner in a wheelchair after getting hit by a car. And he was, throughout the entire walk there, he kept thanking me, saying, I was never going to make it, I was never going to make it. And I said, well, that's why God made multiple people, so that we can all be there for each other. And that's what I strongly believe. And if we all really take that role seriously, then I don't see how we can't solve this issue and help these people in these streets. One thing I know we can do for sure is, not just provide these people a place to sleep and stay, but I have an idea and I have a plan to provide these people with work that can help clean up the city streets. And, they may be homeless, they may not have a roof over their head, but they are some of the most fearless people I've ever met in my life. So I know that whatever it takes, they're going to look out for each other and they're going to look out for the city that they reside in. So if you can just please touch on those topics, again, about the One System initiative and why we're closing down these centers. Again, providing support and materials, and I'm not against helping out migrants. I'm not. I'm just confused as to why we're closing down certain facilities when we can, repurpose these things. So thank you for your time.
Please add Alderman Knudsen to the quorum roll call and Alderwoman Scott to the attendance list. Our next speaker is Jessica Jackson.
Good morning. Where did that man go? Oh, the gentleman that just spoke before me. The answer to your questions is because they don't care. That's the short answer. They don't care. Right now, the Democratic Party's priority is illegal immigrants. That's what time it is. Homelessness has been around since like the late 80s, since the days of Ronald Reagan, when he closed down all those mental hospitals and VA hospitals and stuff like that. That's what created homelessness in America. And it's a topic that a lot of people can make money campaigning about to seem like they're humanitarian, but the reality is they could care less. Now, as it pertains to what we're dealing with today, we're dealing with a city hall that could care less. They have allowed the Hispanic aldermen to bring their issues here and make their problems in their country our problems in America. And that's the reason why Trump has to get in office. See, you all might want to believe this or want to believe that, but America needs a leader that's putting America first. Anytime you have Americans like myself that could come and keep talking about the problems with probate, how they're stealing Black people's property, and how you can have a city council that cares less about that. They don't care. Why? Why wouldn't I vote for Trump? We need somebody on the federal level that can do something about what's going on the local level. On the local level, everybody is Democrat. I don't care where you go, everybody is Democrat. There are no opposing views, there are no opposing positions. So everywhere we go in the city for help, it's Democrat. One dirty hand watching the other, one dirty hand doing a favor for another, and it's leaving us in the position that we are in Americans now, where our lives are literally being destroyed by the Democratic Party. We need somebody that can help us as Americans. There's nothing wrong with America being first when they're taking our tax dollars to take care of this stuff. How in the world is that wrong? For your money to take care of you first, for your council people supposedly to deal with your issues first. How can that be wrong? How can that be racist? It's responsible. You got them having us $1 billion in debt, taking care of people that don't even contribute to the country. Be for real.
That concludes our registered public speakers. We have one item on the agenda today, a resolution offered by Alderman Vasquez, Resolution 10357, calling for this hearing regarding extreme weather response. And we have a number of expert witnesses who will testify. Before I turn it over to Alderman Vasquez, I want to commend him for bringing this important issue before us today. As you all know, every year we have deaths in the city of Chicago from hypothermia. We have deaths from heat stroke. Every one of these deaths is a preventable event, every single one of them. And we're going to get into that today. So with that, I will turn it over to Alderman Vasquez, who does have a presentation, and then we will call our first speaker.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Thank you to our colleagues here at the Committee on Public Safety and to the members of the public for being here today. I think many of us might remember when we had the heat waves in the 90s. I remember sleeping on a mattress with the windows open, trying to survive that, and that's having a roof over my head. And I think what we've seen is a number of us, if we were left out in the heat or in the cold for any longer than an hour, we would lose our minds. We'd watch the anxiety take over. And so as we see what is clearly an increase in homelessness across our city, we see folks in parks, viaducts, out in the streets, really taking into account and imagining what it's like, not just for a couple hours to be out there in that weather, but days, weeks, months, not knowing what kind of shelter, what kind of protection there is. We see that growth. We know that the city is doing some work to address, extreme weather conditions or have solutions for folks who need it. There's also been a focus related to creating more affordable housing as a way to address homelessness. I want to make sure we applaud our colleagues who work on that, but there are people out there who can't afford the affordable, who need help now, who are homeless people, largely black and brown, on the streets of the city. So while we are doing the work to prevent homelessness, to address issues with chronic homelessness that we see in our city, there's more that we need to do. So what we see is that Chicago currently does not offer enough extreme weather resources to unhoused Chicagoans. On our coldest and hottest evenings, unhoused Chicagoans have no shelter available to them. City shelters are often at capacity, and Chicago does not operate any warming or cooling centers overnight. As a result of the lack of resources, unhoused Chicagoans see a high incidence of weather-related injury, like frostbite or amputation, and a high incidence of weather-related death. These are wholly preventable if we set up the right systems in place. Fortunately, there have been advocates out here who have been organizing around improving Chicago's extreme weather resources for years, and we have many visions for an improved extreme weather response plan. Nearly all of them share an understanding that unhoused Chicagoans need nighttime refuge from extreme heat and cold. Now, solving these challenges is incredibly difficult. We know there's funding that's needed, there's change in policy that's needed. The administration agrees that our extreme weather plan should be more robust, but there are real financial and staffing limitations that need to be overcome. However, we have a unique opportunity to address this issue. I want to thank Mayor Johnson and the administration for the installment of Chief Homelessness Officer Cindy Soto and for the pivot to the One System initiative. So although we've had close to 2 years now of what feels like a divisive system, right? One for migrants that have gotten here and one that is in dire need of growth for the homeless that have already been here. By pivoting towards the One System initiative, what we hope to do is have one system, shelter for all who need it. And some of the recommendations coming out of that initiative include keeping Chicago's shelter stocked at 11,000 beds. So we've seen prior to the migrant mission, there were only 3,000 beds at max capacity for everyone who was homeless prior to the migrants coming in a large influx. The migrant mission kind of grow that number to about 15,000 beds. As we look at our budget, we know that we have to figure out what's the sustainable capacity going forward. By creating a one system and having 11,000 beds, you have enough for folks who need it, as we then figure out permanent housing, as well as mental health resources, substance use disorder help for those who need it as well. But also, what we believe is that we need to create a centralized landing zone for all who need it. So people who are trying to identify where they can go to find either warmth or a way away from extreme heat, to have a landing zone that could potentially include flex shelter for extreme temperatures. We hope the administration accepts and implements these recommendations. The administration has also communicated their willingness to create a working group to explore expanding extreme weather response resources. And I hope that our colleagues here participate, hold some accountability to make sure that we get regular progress reports, understand how we're improving. I think by doing so, we can learn what policy changes and legislative changes we might be able to implement here in the city of Chicago, as well as being more clear on what asks and demands we might have our state and federal governments in providing the funding and resources as well. So we're going to now jump into the presentation, which aims to provide a broad picture of the extreme weather resources and shelter resources available or often unavailable to unhoused Chicagoans and the consequence of some of the gaps in our policies. We have a number of presenters. I don't want to steal any thunder. They'll go over a lot of the detail and a lot of the results of the current model and why we think it needs improvement. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share this with our colleagues, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Vasquez. We'll start the slide presentation.
Our first speaker is Dr. Lee Friedman from UIC, who is with us virtually.
How you doing, everybody? Good morning. My name is Lee Friedman. I hope you guys can hear me. So I'm from the University of Illinois Chicago School of Public Health, and I'm one of the co-authors on the state report, the Illinois State Report on Morbidity and Mortality of people experiencing homelessness that was done in collaboration with the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Office to Prevent and End Homelessness at the Governor's Office. So I've been asked to talk just very broadly about kind of the scope of the problem in terms of health effects from temperature-related injuries. So temperature-related injuries includes both cold-related as well as heat-related injuries. Examples would be hypothermia on the cold-related side, and then heat stroke, heat rash, heat fever, etc. on the heat-related injury side. So we looked at data, death certificate data for 6 years, and we identified 100 deaths involving people experiencing homelessness that were specifically identified as a contributing cause was temperature-related causes, of which 96 were cold-related injuries. However, in addition to the death certificate data, we also had data on all ED visits and hospital admissions in the state of Illinois. And we identified almost 6,400 admissions, hospital visits over that 6-year period, of which 90% were cold related. Now, we're in the city of Chicago, so of both deaths and non-fatal hospital visits, 66% of the deaths and almost 50% of the hospital visits occurred within Chicago. So Chicago really does bear a disproportionate burden in terms of the scope of temperature-related injuries statewide. And we consistently see that year to year that there's about 10 times more cold-related injuries than heat-related injuries, but I'm going to end on a caveat to that finding that we see year after year. In addition, our research shows that there's specific risk factors that dramatically increase the risk of suffering a temperature-related injury. In particular, substance use disorder, and within substance use disorders, particularly alcohol use disorder. Alcohol really affects the way the body can regulate its internal temperature, as well as how we perceive temperature, particularly experience cold. In addition, as we get older, we are more susceptible to temperature-related injuries, as well as individuals that have pre-existing conditions, particularly circulatory and respiratory diseases, are at greater risk of these temperature-related injuries. And what's very important among people experiencing homelessness is that often we see these three very primary risk factors kind of joined together. They're often occurring all at once simultaneously in this population because we have an older population that are unhoused. Next slide. So a lot of people also think, well, you have temperature-related injury, it ends there. But actually what we see is that after an individual suffers a temperature-related injury, they're also at greater risk, both during the course of hospitalization and after discharge from hospitalization, of medical complications, particularly infection, kidney disorders, and metabolic disorders. And then, in addition, among cold-related injuries, it's already been mentioned that a very common cold-related injury are frostbites. People think frostbite's no big deal, it's just a finger or a toe, what's the big deal? But what we actually see is that 12% of frostbites result in a surgical amputation, and over half of those surgical amputations involve part of the foot up to the knee. And these are major amputations that are incredibly disabling and life-altering. I want to just end on one note, is that it's well recognized within the research that heat-related injuries and heat-related adverse effects are severely undercounted because the nature of the coding, both within death certificates as well as hospital data, doesn't do a good job capturing conditions that are exacerbated when that individual is exposed to heat, particularly if it's a cardiovascular condition or a respiratory condition. So the numbers are severely undercounted. So even though we see that disproportionate number between cold-related and heat-related injuries, I don't want the conclusion to be that, oh, all we need to do is really invest in heating centers during the winter, because in fact we also have an endemic problem of heat-related injuries and exacerbation of adverse health outcomes during the summer as well. Thank you for inviting me. That's all I have to say today.
Thank you, Dr. Friedman. Next, we have Owen Luer with Loyola Street Medicine to talk about his research on frostbite.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name's Owen. I'm with Loyola Street Medicine, and I'm also one of the directors at Chicago Street Medicine. So our group, along with Dr. Teresa Nguyen at Loyola, studied people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in Chicago, and we wanted to figure out, okay, how many people have gotten frostbite in their lifetime? How many people have gotten amputations? Because this has not been studied in any population like this in the world. We don't know the baseline numbers that people experience, especially in Chicago, which is America's largest or coldest large city. So we found that injuries highly prevalent. 29.5% of people have reported having frostbite in the past. And while that might be inflated due to self-reporting, we found, and this was verified on physical exam, 2.1% of this population have had amputations. And 7.1% of the people who got frostbite have had an amputation. So this injury is very severe at baseline. And then interestingly, too, we talked to these people and we asked, where do you stay when it's cold? And we found only 14% of subjects accessed shelter that we considered habitable on cold evenings. That includes a warming shelter, an apartment, a hotel, a friend's house, or anything like that. The rest were all out on the streets, or especially on the CTA. And then this has been peer-reviewed and going in for publishment in March. So next slide. So is frostbite injury even that bad? Dr. Lee Friedman just touched on that for a little bit, but what does it look like? Is it just a cold finger, cold hand, or what can it do to someone? Next slide. So in your packets, to all the older people, you do have a picture of an injury. I'll kind of go over that now. So in your packets, you see A man who came into Loyola for frostbite to his toes was admitted to the internal medicine service, and then was talked to by our. We have an inpatient street medicine program to help connect these folks to services on discharge. And you can see how his injury evolves from one day to a couple days later. So he came into the hospital. He has a little bit of swelling around the tips of his toes, maybe a blister there on his left second toe. And then a couple days later, you can see the significant necrosis happening around the tips of his toes on both feet. And he did have to have amputations due to this. This man was also 28 with no past medical history. He was sleeping outside in January. So this is one of our more mild examples. I spared you from a very severe image of frostbite. But now let's talk about like how does frostbite happen? What's the process? How does it happen through heating and cooling? So imagine we're going through time. Time is left to right. Temperature is top to bottom. So we're going to start at the top left. Someone goes out into the cold. Say this is a guy walking around looking for a place to sleep. As his body, as his hand, we'll say, starts cooling down, the blood vessels in his hand constrict, and then eventually he'll lose nervous sensation. So those nerves in his hand will stop firing, and as we cool down and freeze, we get ice crystal formation. Our cells burst, and this causes microvascular damage. So the blood vessels going to all the little nooks and crannies in his hand are now burst apart and cannot deliver blood. So that'll cause tissue damage and necrosis. And now let's say he comes to our housing access center on Kedzie, comes inside, starts to warm up. As we rewarm, blood and liquid starts to perfuse. While inefficiently, it does come back into his hand. Excess oxygen will cause damage, and then he'll get inflammation, additional vasoconstriction, which is the blood vessels again constricting, and he'll start getting clots in his hand, right? And so you'll get clots, which leads to even less blood flowing into his hand, blisters, and then more tissue damage and necrosis. And then let's say he stays 20 minutes, he's told there's no space in the shelters in Chicago, and since it's not a warming shelter, he has to leave. He'll go through this process again if that hand freezes down. And with each time through this cycle, he'll have more damage, more risk of amputation due to frostbite, as well as high risk of chronic pain in that hand due to nerve damage. So we can move on to the next slide. And so just in summary, I think an important point to leave this on is refreezing makes injury worse. So if each time someone's hand that had been frozen freezes, they're at increased risk of amputation and chronic pain. Importantly, people who get frostbite need to get to an emergency room within 24 hours, hopefully shorter, but there's a time frame to get a clot-busting drug called TPA. That helps reopen those clots in his hand to get blood to his fingers, and that would help him not have to get an amputation down the line. And there are also advanced imaging techniques that people can use, that doctors can use in the ED to determine whether or not someone needs an amputation. And we would rather someone get a medical amputation than an auto amputation or toes just falling off in the field, which we did see in our study, because that puts people at risk for pretty severe infection. And then, just please review that picture in your slides, because of note, injury evolves over days. If someone comes in with a frozen finger, if it's frozen, it will not be swollen, and it might not be black. It could look normal, but that person in 3 days may have a completely black finger, which should have gotten treatment. So it's hard to tell at initial presentation when someone walks into a shelter whether or not they have severe or very mild frostbite. So therefore, people with legitimate concern for frostbite do deserve immediate medical attention, an ambulance to the emergency department. But even more importantly, and to the point of this hearing, people who are at some risk for having developed frostbite deserve sustained warmth. We do not want them going back through that cycle over and over and putting them at increased risk of amputation and chronic pain. Thank you all.
Thank you, Owen. Our next presenters are Lynette Sims and Dr. Howard Urban, both from People's Response Network. Dr. Ehrman was also a former Chicago Assistant Health Commissioner.
Well, okay. My name's Lynette Sims. Thank you for having us here today. The People's Response Network is a grassroots organization with a mission to rebuild our public health infrastructure. Next slide, please. So last year, the city of Chicago launched the Cool Shot 2023 campaign. The Cool Shot 2023 campaign was an initiative due to the fact that the NOAA heat mapping project selected the city of Chicago as one of the 23 cities to participate in heat mapping. People's Response Network, we were one of the community-based organizations that worked with the city, the Chicago Department of Public Health in planning the Cool Shot 2023 campaign. On the day that we collected the temperature results is termed Activation Day. And on that day, we collected three different measurements in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. And the afternoon had the most significant temperature gap compared to the morning and the afternoon. So there was a 22-degree Fahrenheit difference between the hottest areas and the coolest areas in the city of Chicago. And I also want to make note that the temperature, I also want to make note that the afternoon temperature data collection period was from 3 p.m. Central Standard Time to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on July 28th of 2023, which was the third hottest day of that year. The hottest areas in the city of Chicago are African American and Latino areas on the southwest, west, and south sides of Chicago. Those communities were mostly impacted by redlining. So we see the legacy of redlining due to the fact that these community areas lack trees. These community areas have the highest amount of vacant lots, are closest to railroads, are closest to expressways, are closest to industry that generates excessive amount of heat, which leaves African American and Latino communities bearing the burden. Next slide, please. So in the 1995 heat wave, 739 people passed away in 4 days, and Black Chicagoans were twice as likely to die than white Chicagoans in 1995. And if you compare this map that lists all the 77 community areas, and the community areas that are in Black had the most deaths, it's very similar to the Cool Shot 2023 results and also to the 1930s homeowners loan corporation maps, which started redlining. Next slide, please. So we suggest that the city of Chicago look towards Phoenix, Arizona in regards to heat lessons and what Phoenix, Arizona is doing to try to mitigate the heat crisis that they are experiencing. So in the first line, 645 heat-related deaths. That should actually say in Maricopa County. And there were 400 deaths in Phoenix, Arizona, and half of those deaths were of homeless people. Heat was the second biggest killer of homeless people in Phoenix, Arizona, and also unhoused people experienced third-degree burns from the asphalt being so hot during the excessive heat waves in Phoenix, Arizona. There's a good report called Streets of Fire that details the burns and also the number of people who had to go to intensive care due to the burns that they experienced. So Phoenix, Arizona has implemented several policy recommendations to address the crisis. And one of those policy recommendations is called Cool Pavement Pilot Program. So this Cool Pavement Pilot Program, it sprays a water-based asphalt treatment on the streets. And that water-based asphalt treatment, it reflects the sun rays back into the atmosphere instead of absorbing it, which resulted in at least a 10.5 to 12 degree Fahrenheit lower average street surface temperature versus traditional asphalt. So People's Response Network, we recommend that the city of Chicago implements a cool pavement pilot program and prioritize the hottest community areas first. Thank you.
Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Really want to thank the committee chair and in particular Alderman Vasquez for inviting us into this space. It's been a while since I've testified to City Council. I was the Assistant Health Commissioner appointed by Mayor Harold Washington for about 8 years. I think first and foremost, we want to honor the hundreds of people who have died in the last few days in one of the worst hurricanes ever recorded on Mother Earth, Hurricane Helene. There are hundreds of bodies that are still not accounted for. We expect the death toll to definitely go over 500. People who are unhoused during Hurricane Helene, just like in every climate disaster, are the ones by far at highest risk. The first slide comes from data from throughout the United States, including the state of California, Arizona, New York, etc. Even though in the state of California, for example, unhoused people only account for 0.1 to 0.2% of the population, 13% of all hospitalizations for heat are among unhoused people. Half the heat deaths in every state that has counted them is unhoused people. And I think you heard great testimony before me about other disease problems with cold. It's true with floods, tornadoes, whatever. We had a situation 2 months ago that has never happened in the history of Chicago since white men took over the land from the Potawatomi in Miami and Ojibwe, and that is 27 F0 or F1 tornadoes touched down either inside the city limits or within 30 miles of downtown Chicago. The city, like every other city, is completely unprepared and unfunded, underfunded to deal with this situation. Next slide, please. One of the first things that this committee can do is to recommend by executive order that the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, immediately change the policy at 10 South Kedzie today to back to the way it was originally, which is that when people come in after 5 o'clock, they are not forced to go into a shelter. They can sit there. The second thing the mayor can do today is basically order OEMC, which is responsible for all these policies primarily, to stop kicking people out of any space that's a public space of the city of Chicago for falling asleep. Everybody here who's gone out in heat, gone out in cold, knows that it's a natural body reaction to fall asleep if you come into a heated or cooling space. When do humans get in trouble with heat or cold? We know the answer to this. And finally, the government of the United States, the federal government, and this government, starting with Alderperson Maria Haddon's 2022 cooling ordinance, are recognizing the reality. Once the heat index, which is the combination of temperature and heat, get to 80, all of us, even healthy people, start losing the ability to cool our bodies by sweat evaporating. Once the temperature gets to 50 or less, at least, sometimes this can happen in the 60s, basically people get hypothermic. And a wind chill of 32 is when frostbite begins, not negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit or stuff you may have read in a newspaper. I'm 77 years old. We lived in about 8 different apartments until I was 14. And in 1986, with the support of Mayor Washington, we created the first heat ordinance in the city of Chicago, meaning that on the south side, in working class neighborhoods of color, in white neighborhoods, There was no heat at night during the winter unless the landlord lived in your building. That was the tradition that we changed in 1986. So the city can do this. We now have the support of the federal government. On July 2nd, President Biden announced that basically for the first time after trying to get this done for 20 years, the federal government under OSHA and the CDC have now proposed a heat rule for workers that starts at a heat index of 80. This is incredibly significant. The details are here in terms of what has to happen, but it's quite specific about cooling, about providing water, education, etc. Next, we have the 2023 proposed Chicago Heat Illness Outdoor Workers Protection that was sponsored originally by Alderperson Haddon and my actual Alderman, Mike Rodriguez. This is another significant step forward that, again, starts actions beginning at 75 to 80 degrees outdoor temperatures. The 2022 cooling ordinance we already talked about. And we want to thank Alderperson Haddon for basically listening to ourselves and a lot of other people and changing the actual trigger point from 90 to 80 heat index. Very, very important. Next slide is that in the last week, it was announced by the city of Chicago that police are going to be taken off of mental health emergency response programs. Exactly the same thing has to happen now with emergency response to weather. What's happened since we decimated the Chicago Department of Public Health and Department of what we used to call Human Services, together which have lost 3,000 workers in the last 30 years. We used to have 2,000 workers in the Department of Health. Now we have about 700. Dr. Ige, thankfully, is increasing that slightly. What has to happen is police have to be replaced by workers from the city of Chicago who are community health workers, who are outreach workers from the Department of whatever it's called now, Family and Human Services. We don't want police knocking on people's doors. We don't want them showing up with a gun in their holster for somebody who's got a weather-related emergency. Next are the actions the city has taken in the past and can take in the future. In 2006, there was a major blackout on the south side that affected over 100,000 people. And the city responded by sending out dozens of CTA air-conditioned buses that people could just get on. That has to start happening now with the temperature, heat index, cold temperature figures that we gave. That has to happen this fall, this winter. It's a no questions asked policy. You don't ask people when they get on a bus, do you want to sign up for a shelter? That's not the reality of unhoused people. If they want to sign up for the shelter, they should be given that choice, but they just get on the bus. They get a blanket, they get something to eat, they get some warm stuff or cool stuff, depending on the situation. The other things it has to do that other speakers have mentioned is that we have to open up cooling centers, and probably the most relatively friendly place are the 81 libraries to be 24/7 cooling, warming centers. We now up to, I think, about a dozen libraries, maybe a little less, that now have social workers hired by the city. This has to be expanded, but the libraries are probably the most logical place that people could walk to and get to if they can't and they don't want to get on a bus. We need to have people go out before this happens from the city of Chicago and from the nonprofit partners that are sitting here and testifying to do simple things for people to prepare for extreme weather, to encampments or whatever. There are $2 NASA blankets that can keep people safe to a certain point from freezing to death. And there's lots of other things like this that could be done by the city. The city recently began to give out backpacks through the Department of Health. We gave out 1,000 backpacks this summer for emergency response. I think that's a great start, but we need a lot more, and those should go first and foremost to unhoused people. Geographic priorities. Everybody here knows where the encampments are. So that's where you go first, and then you go to the neighborhoods that have the least amount of air conditioning. We know that from the U.S. Census data. The long census actually asked that question. And we all know now that even though people may have more air conditioners than they did in '95, far more people are not flipping the switch to turn them on because the electricity rate has tripled in terms of the cost. And we have to enforce the new state law that came online this year, that there can be no utility shutoffs during periods of extreme heat and cold. A lot of actual alder people didn't know about this law until we brought it to their attention. It was passed last year in the state legislature. It's got to be implemented and enforced. Lastly, we want to talk about the problem with statistics that you're hearing today and in the past. The only statistic that really matters in terms of, in addition to what we've heard today, is the statistic that Dr. Steve Whitman, the chief epidemiologist of the city, almost got fired for by Mayor Richard M. Daley. And that is 739 people died in 4 days. You cannot do this by death certificates. Physicians are not going to put on a death certificate 99% of the time that this person died of heat or cold or a tornado of flooding. What they're going to put, and the same thing has happened under COVID, what they're going to put is this person had diabetes, this person had heart failure, that person had hypertension. So going by death certificates is a little bit helpful, but you have to calculate excess deaths. It's real simple. You go back about 10 or 15 years, like Dr. Whitman showed in the movie Cooked, which if you haven't seen, it's super important to watch. We're happy to show it here. And you calculate how many people died today on October 1st compared to the last 15 years. You adjust it for population, although the population of the city hasn't changed much, and it gives you excess deaths. That's it. So we're calling on funding for CDPH to be able to do this in real time with excess hospital visits, excess hospitalization, excess deaths. Lastly, and I'll finish here, where's the money going to come from? We all know where the money should come from. You got to pass and re-implement the head tax. That's at least $100 million. You got to pass the financial transaction tax. That's several $billion. And you got to move police department positions for first responders into the Health and Human Services Department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ehrman, and thank you, Lynette Sims. Next is Isabella Mancini, who is going to talk about Harold Washington Library serving as a 24/7 warming center last winter.
Hello. Good. It's going to be hard to follow you, Dr. Ehrman. I am Isabella Mancini. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently a program director at Healthcare Alternative Systems. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I am also a part of CHARGE. I am also from Chicago. I was raised in Belmont Cragen, and I have been working in homeless services and providing services to people living with severe mental illness for about 11 years in Chicago. So I'm going to talk a little bit today just about providing homeless services, specifically outreach services in extreme weather. So last year, as part of CHARGE, we conducted a survey. We utilized 5 different street outreach teams of Unhoused Chicagoans. We did it in fall, asking questions about unhoused Chicagoans' experience in extreme heat and extreme cold. We utilize direct service workers to do it because these are the people who have relationships with folks sleeping outside. In the survey conducted, 45% of individuals surveyed indicated they stay in place during extreme cold, so that they would rather stay where they are sleeping than utilize the options that are currently available to them by our system. And during extreme heat, 56% of individuals stay in place. And in place for those folks means CTA, it means encampments, it means under viaducts, it means bus stations, all the things that you all already know. We also asked people, what would they need to see that is different than we currently offer in our shelter systems in order for them to seek shelter? We got a lot of different answers. We were able to group them into like a couple main categories, and those things, almost every participant that we asked said better services on site, so higher quality of care, increased bed availability. A lot of folks said they don't even bother because they know that going to 10 South Kedzie to them or calling is a waste of their time. Cleanliness and quality, right, of the actual facility. Folks would rather sleep outside than go to some of the beds that we are offering them. Privacy, so a lot of folks, especially folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness, either because of trauma or because of history of incarceration, do not feel safe in congregate settings. Household remaining together, a lot of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, they have chosen family or they have a non-traditional family structure, and those family structures are not accepted in almost any of our shelters in Chicago. And the last one was lower barrier shelter, or shelters with less strict rules. We're seeing people who maybe can't like accommodate a curfew, or can't accommodate not being able to bring their pocket knife inside, or can't accommodate things like traditional shelter rules. And so what they're doing is feeling forced to stay outside. And we know that staying outside when it's negative 20 or when it's 105 degrees is life-threatening. Next slide, please. Last winter, the city initiated opening Harold Washington Library for emergency shelter during extreme cold. This was a great response. I was working outreach. I was supporting my team last winter. It opened really last minute. We found out about it like the day or the day before it was opening, so we scrambled. We got a ton of people in. Anyone who was working outreach, managing outreach, can attest to that. All of us were like kicking butt trying to get people in, but it worked. And it worked because it was low barrier. You could come in at any time of day or night. You could leave at any time of day or night. Clients could self-refer. You didn't have to be referred by an outreach worker or by 311 or by DFSS or by the city. You could walk yourself in, walk yourself out, right? It worked because if you had something in your bag to keep you safe and it wasn't allowed, they wouldn't confiscate it. They would just put it in a cup behind the front desk and let you leave with it on your way out, right? So we had this temporary setup that allowed people to come inside so that they wouldn't die outside and then leave when they needed to and go back to their belongings if they so needed to during the day or when the weather let up. Was it perfect? No. But did it keep hundreds of people alive? I would say absolutely. Things that we need moving forward, better planning around doing that every winter and every summer. We need to know further than 2 days in advance if we're going to have facilities operating like that. And we need to make sure that they have ample staffing to provide services for the people inside. We also need all of our outreach programs, whether they're DFSS delegates or not, to have direct pathways to shelter for their participants in all extreme weather emergencies. That means that when it's negative 20 outside, we shouldn't have to call 311 to place our clients. We should be able to take our clients to any shelter with an open bed, whether it's shelters that are flexing up, whether it's temporary facilities, and get them a bed. Ideally, clients can do it themselves. If that's not the solution, then at the very least, every provider needs to be able to do it rather than bottlenecking through the 311 service. In addition to that, over the years, we've seen hotel solutions. For some winters, I have experienced that a few years ago with the hotel at 73rd and Cicero. We saw it last winter with the Tremont. Non-congregate options offer a life-saving opportunity for people who are often either unsafe in shelters or turned away from traditional shelters because of severe mental illness, because of substance use, or other triggers and traumas. We see people who are formerly incarcerated, have SMI, or experience SUD cannot survive in conventional shelter. So providing non-congregate options, if not always, at least for extreme weather, is allowing people to survive. Our general consensus here, based on the survey we did with Charge and based on our experience providing services to people living unsheltered, is that people want services. There's help-seeking behavior happening, and they're doing more than we could possibly imagine to survive and look for resources. They're just looking for resources that maintain dignity and autonomy. Thank you. My name is Isabella Mancini.
Thank you, Isabella Mancini. Next, we have Erica Jackson from Charge, who's going to talk about her lived experience.
In the winter of 2023, I'd moved from a shelter downtown due to falling on hard times. I was newly hired from my employer, so I had no uniforms for my job. The hours were clear, and I'd have to occasionally work late, so I communicated with the shelter staff as soon as I found out. Shelter staff explained that they would communicate with the second shift that I would come in late. To my surprise, upon entering the shelter after the standard curfew, I was interrogated by the security guards asking why I was coming in late. I'm coming from work, I replied. I told the staff that I was coming in late tonight. Instead of going to get a staff member to confirm this, the security proceeded to tell me that I was not on the list for coming in late and I had to leave the building. Frightened by the guards, I still stood my ground, asking if they can go and get a staff member to allow me to speak with them. The guards just stared at me and continued to ask questions. One inquired about the reason why I didn't have a uniform, while another asked, was there a small gift or something in the bag that I had with me? Although I have rights, I felt in the moment that I needed to answer the slew of questions being thrown at me. I told the guards that it was a birthday gift from my job. One snickered under his breath while the other proceeded to go and get a staff member. As I stood at what felt like an eternity in a dim hallway with the guards' piercing eyes staring, I felt like I had been treated like a criminal for following the directions necessary to avoid this happening. After the staff approached, she immediately recognized who I was and allowed me entry. In this moment, I was frightened and seeking the shelter I had been promised previously. Upon walking to the elevator, I was still being verbally degraded by the security, telling me that I needed to make sure that I had my life together. Instead of being met warmly, I was treated as if I had been a lying criminal for simply trying to enter the space I recognize as home for the time being. In closing, having these high barrier shelters during inclement weather directly impacted not only my late arrival to later than usual arrival, but it also could have been the place where I would have had to sleep for the night outside without any extra protection or precautions. I could have easily been a victim to a more violent crime while simply trying to get a night's rest before returning to work the next day. Might I direct my experience in correlation with the Charge Flex research findings, which indicated that most unhoused tend to stay in place during extreme heat or cold due to poor shelter conditions, including the low quality of care and shelter concerns with inflexibility for policies. My security guard experience was consistent with the facts stated in the Reader article, Lukewarm Welcome, with the security guards not offering the proper assistance when needed. There were several instances throughout my stay where fellow residents were being threatened and harassed with no further support from the security guards. From my point of view, we can truly benefit from implementing the Charge Flex initiative to have more relaxed barriers, further encouraging people to seek shelter during both extreme heat and cold temperatures. If I never insisted the guards go and get a staff member, I could have easily been another story about a homeless person found dead due to extreme weather conditions. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you, Erica, for sharing. We're gonna go a bit out of order here. We have Dr. Trent Ford, who is the Illinois State climatologist on, who has to leave a bit early. So I'm going to flip ahead a few slides, and Dr. Ford, I will pass it over to you. Dr. Ford, are you there?
Dr. Ford, you're talking, but you're on mute.
Dr. Ford, we're unable to hear you. Maybe you could leave the Zoom room and then rejoin. And in the meantime, we can forward with one other presenter and then try to go back to you. Yeah. Or, all right, up next we do have Maxwell Williams, who is also a member of Chicago Coalition for the Homeless.
Good morning, everyone. I am Maxwell Williams. I'm a grassroots leader and the current board president for the Chicago Coalition to End Homelessness. I am also a grassroots leader with the Chicago Coalition to End Homelessness and part of the Lived Experience Commission for All Chicago. In 2000 and from 2015 to 2016, my children and I were homeless, experiencing housing insecurities. We had to go through a lot, and there were a bunch of issues and barriers while we were homeless. One of them was we didn't know about the different weather streams. We went through 3 seasons of extreme weather, such as winter, the cold weathers. We went through spring, excessive rain, cold weather, and also the summer heat of 2016, which had very high temperatures and heat indexes. I was homeless because I had a stage 3 cancer diagnosis that rendered me disabled due to the treatment. I had 3 young children, ages 8, 6, and 5. We went to 2 different shelters. Our starting point was 10 South Kizzy. It's what I know now is a warming center and holding site for homeless individuals to be placed in the shelter. My personal experiences are that my issues that I had no one to speak to before today and being brought onto this specific project about extreme weather is that there were barriers in accessing resources to help during these extreme weather issues when we were homeless. There were rules and regulations within the homeless system where we had to leave the shelter every day between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m., which is when the weather is the worst. And what I designed was different mechanisms for my children and I to survive. And we also received blessings during that rain period from an owner of a local subway. He would see us on one occasion when he had to come in and get his stocks early because they were preparing for the delivery person, the rains and everything that day. He came in at about 5, saw us outside, and we were in his store doorway. He let us in. He got his deliveries of his breads and different things to make the food for his company that day. And after that, he would come in every day, not because he had to, and then he started opening up about 6:37 just to accommodate me and my children, which he later told me 2 or 3 months down the line. I just thought it was just something he was doing for business purposes. Because of that kindness, we had a place to stay in while it was raining, and also during the winter time as well. And we didn't have to stay outside and wait for that first bus to start running so that I could get my children from the north side shelter to the south side to their school. And it was also during the winter that we would have to ride the buses to stay warm when we didn't have anywhere to go. Sometimes we went to the libraries as well. I feel that, next slide, because when I was in the shelter, I had low income and very little money for myself and my 3 children and the cancer diagnosis and losing my 2 jobs. It was a lack of knowledge about the weather. I did not have a working phone, and sometimes if you didn't have the phone or the Wi-Fi, and I had to find out about different places, restaurants, libraries that would accommodate and let you use their Wi-Fi. And that was an issue for me when my children and I were homeless, not having a place to be during these weather times. And my children and I frequent the hospital a lot. I had 2 children with asthma. It was controlled before we went to the shelters, but during being in the shelters, we experienced my children having to be hospitalized, 2 of them, and go to the emergency room 16 times throughout us being homeless. And they also had upper respiratory infections. I was also diagnosed twice with walking pneumonia. And my thoughts on the changes to the emergency weather response system, in addition to what's already here, because we have to understand that you have to meet a person where they are. Every person does not have access to a working phone. Every person is not computer literate. Every person does not use house landline phones. Every person, because technology has changed, does not have access to public broadcasts of extreme emergency weather. I feel that there should be availability of multiple languages of the broadcast via radio, news, flyers, social media, and also posting in local businesses, DHS offices, libraries, anywhere that any person could go to know about emergency response during extreme emergency weather. I feel that bus stops are have critical information. When people are standing there, they read the billboards and different things on it, and that's another way to advertise for the extreme weather. Universe Extreme Weather Hotline with resources for people to call, text, or see online to access. In communities with shared spaces like libraries, police stations, emergency rooms, CTA buses, and trains. Cell phone alerts, email blast alerts, text numbers designated to sharing alerts on severe weather, cooling centers, and locations. App development for city resources for extreme weather that can be accessed by anyone with any level of communication or technology ability. Help getting a housing insecurity register for any apps, text lines, help accessing 311 for cooling centers. Shuttle buses that are free to cooling centers. Perhaps some type of contract with CTA to allow homeless or housing insecure individuals or people just in general to ride the buses on days of extreme weather for free without being hassled or kicked off of the bus. More access to Chicago residents where they can get help with finding cooling centers, resources during extreme weather, and getting transportation to help these centers. More connections to free pop-up or scheduled events to let the public know of the resources that the city of Chicago has during extreme weather. A place for housing and security to place their belongings in a locked in or locked and secured area so they can safely leave their current housing insecurity, such as being street homeless or riding the buses. They can put their bags down and be willing to go to these places instead of not having somewhere to go. And also those individuals living doubled up so they have another place to go when they don't have the ability to stay in the home that they're currently sharing with a relative while they're down and out. More cooling center locations throughout the city of Chicago and utilizing the vacant buildings, schools, and sites the city has available in central locations.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chief Chow, Mr. Sibley, Madam Secretary, Assistant Inspector General Brian Buckner, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. It is 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners Suthers, Shields, and Garcia are present, and we have a quorum. Mr. President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the board secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public, please, sir, please put your hand down. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of speakers will be: a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who've spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there's a need for the board to carry out the public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and or removal from the meeting. At this time, we will have item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief Chow.
Thank you. Good morning, Commission President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners Mr. Buckner, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Mr. Sibley. Today, I'll be discussing significant events from the previous week, providing a crime update, and then discussing our personnel strength. We have had no officer-involved shootings or categorical uses of force during the previous week. Year to date, we've had 22 officer-involved shootings in comparison to 26 this time last year, for a decrease of 15%. I want to report on 2 multidisciplinary investigative team, or MSIT, callouts that occurred last week. The first one was in 77th area on September 27th, 2024, at approximately 11:37 hours. A 211 Grand Theft Auto radio call was generated in the area of Buckingham and Martin Luther King Boulevard Jr. Boulevard in Southwest. The comments of the radio call indicated that a white box truck had been taken and a possible male Hispanic wearing light colored clothing was hanging onto the truck while moving. Shortly thereafter, a second radio call was generated, this time in 77th in the area of Vernon and Denker. The comments of the call indicated that a 211 Grand Theft Auto had just occurred. The vehicle was again described as a white box truck with a male Asian hanging onto the vehicle yelling for help. As officers began to search the area for the truck, they located the box truck facing eastbound at Florence from Broadway. A male Asian began running towards the police vehicle. The officers determined that the male and the white box truck were related to the radio call and made a U-turn in an attempt to stop the vehicle. Upon completing the U-turn, the officers lost sight of the vehicle and the victim. As the officers continued to search the area and located the vehicle driving south on Broadway with the victim hanging onto the vehicle, the officers activated their emergency equipment in order to catch up to the box truck, which continued south on Broadway, and then negotiated a left-hand turn eastbound 77th Street. As the officers turned onto 77th Street, they observed the victim fall from the moving vehicle and subsequently was run over by the box truck. The officers immediately stopped to render aid to the victim and advised other units over the air of the last direction of travel. Other units from 77th continued the pursuit of the stolen vehicle, which eventually terminated in the area of Normandy and Vernon. The suspect was taken into custody with that incident. Unfortunately, the victim succumbed to his injuries he sustained when he fell from the vehicle. No officers or other community members were injured during this incident. Detectives from the MSIT team responded to the scene and are handling the investigation. The criminal investigation is being handled by Operation South Bureau Homicide. Our second MSIT call out was in Wilshire in West LA on September 27th at approximately 21:54 hours. West Los Angeles Uniform Patrol Unit spotted a stolen vehicle being driven by a suspect. When the officers requested a backup and an airship and a supervisor as they began to follow the vehicle. A Wilshire Patrol unit that was in the area became the secondary unit of the following. Officers attempted to initiate a traffic stop. However, the vehicle failed to yield and a pursuit was initiated. The stolen vehicle entered a cul-de-sac, briefly stopped, reversed, ramming the police vehicle behind it. The officers continued their pursuit of the vehicle, with the suspect now wanted for assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer. As the pursuit ended when the suspect collided with an uninvolved motorist at the intersection of Venice and La Cienega, and the force of the collision caused the motorist vehicle to crash into an MTA bus, which fortunately had no passengers on board. The suspect was taken into custody without incident. The uninvolved motorist was transported to the hospital for treatment of a broken humerus. The officers who were intentionally rammed by the suspect were also taken to the hospital for complaint of pain and later released. No officers or other community members were injured during this incident. Detectives from the MSIT team are handling the investigation. You may have seen the MTA incident in which an individual was tragically shot and the bus driver taken hostage. On Wednesday, September 25th at approximately 12:45 hours, officers from Los Angeles Police Department Southeast area, responded to radio calls of a disturbance and a possible assault with a deadly weapon on an MTA bus near Manchester Boulevard in Figueroa. The bus driver, sensing danger, activated the panic alarm, notifying the bus operations center, which then quickly relayed vital information to our 911 operators, reporting that a man armed with a gun was on board. The officers tracked the bus and located it at 117th and Figueroa. At that point, the bus stopped. Southeast officers approached the bus using their public address system to communicate with the passengers. However, instead of complying, the bus began to slowly move away from the officers, prompting a pursuit. The chase lasted approximately an hour as officers followed the bus through Los Angeles into downtown. Recognizing a potential hostage situation, the officers developed a tactical plan and notified the SWAT team early and worked out a strategy to safely stop the bus. Officers deployed spike strips to disable the bus, whereupon the bus was stopped at Alameda and 6th. By then, the SWAT team officers had joined the pursuit and prepared for a possible hostage rescue. Once the bus had stopped, officers quickly disabled it to prevent any further movement. SWAT then used a diversionary device to safely board the bus, apprehending the suspect and rescuing the bus driver and one other passenger. Tragically, another passenger, Mr. Anthony Rivera, was found with multiple gunshot wounds, rushed to the hospital where he later succumbed to his injuries. The bus driver and second passenger, who had been hiding in the back of the bus, were safely rescued. South Bureau Homicide Division has assumed responsibility for the incident. The suspect, 51-year-old Lamont Campbell, was arrested at scene and booked for murder. Yesterday, we attended a press conference with the LA County District Attorney, who's filed 12 felony counts against Mr. Campbell.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
This kind of violence is unacceptable, and we will continue to work diligently to keep our community safe. I would like to extend my sincerest condolences on behalf of the LAPD to the family of Mr. Rivera, and the tragic loss is heartbreaking. Our thoughts are with them during this incredibly difficult time. But I'd also like to praise the actions of our police officers from Southeast, as well as our SWAT team and the bus driver for quick thinking and bravery that really helped bring this incident to a close without further loss of life. Next, I'll report on a multi-six shooting that was in the media on September 25th at approximately 15 hours. Officers from 77th there responded to an assault with a deadly weapon near the area of 74th Street and Figueroa. Upon the officers' arrival, they located 6 people who had been shot. Preliminary investigation determined that 3 male suspects driving a four-door black Chevy Malibu, approached a group of 6 individuals, 5 females and 1 male, who were walking in the area. The suspects opened fire, striking all 6 victims. Los Angeles Fire Department quickly responded and transported all 6 victims to local hospitals, and thankfully all the victims are in stable condition. At this early stage in the investigation, we do not believe any of the 6 victims were intended targets. Although the incident occurred near a homeless encampment, we do not believe the motive was related to homelessness. At the scene, officers recovered 29 expended 9mm shell casings. Detectives from 77th are actively pursuing leads to help identify the suspects. Year to date, just as a report, year to date, September 28th, there have been 117 shootings in 77th area, which represents a decrease of 14.6%. I'll talk about the recent mansion vandalism that has also been in the news. In recent weeks, news coverage has highlighted several large abandoned mansions in Los Angeles that have been vandalized with graffiti, and have generated numerous calls for service from the surrounding community regarding vandalism and trespassing. I want to ensure that we are doing everything possible to address the ongoing issue. 2 of these mansions owned by the same individual are located in North Hollywood and Hollywood areas. The senior lead officers in these areas have been working diligently to resolve the situation by coordinating with the Department of Buildings.
Excuse me, Chief. Ma'am, you want to have a conversation, you can take it outside. Let the chief finish his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Department of Building Safety to secure.
Ma'am, this is your first and only warning for disrupting the meeting. Chief, please continue.
Thank you, Commissioner. This has included installing fencing and boarding up lower windows to prevent unauthorized entry. Additionally, efforts have been made to remove the graffiti, and as of last week, both properties have been cleaned. The properties are currently undergoing legal proceedings that hopefully will be resolved in the near future. The third property that was reported on yesterday involved a property in West Los Angeles. And again, the senior lead officers in West Los Angeles have met with the property owner's real estate agent, and similar precautions are being taken, including securing fencing. I wanted to also bring attention to a 7-Eleven flash robberies update. You've noticed that in the past several months, 7-Eleven has been the victim of several flash robberies involving juveniles on bikes. On September 26th and 29th, significant progress was made on the ongoing investigation into the 7-Eleven robberies we have recently seen on the news. On September 26th and 27th, detectives from the Commercial Crimes Division completed multiple media interviews with the various news outlets regarding these crimes. Press releases have had an immediate impact, generating numerous tips from the public. Some examples, some key arrests on September 26th, organized retail crime task force responded to Northeast area where a parent had brought their juvenile child in who was involved in a flash robbery. The juvenile was booked for robbery under California Penal Code Section 211. On September 28th, another parent in Southwest area brought their child into the station. That juvenile was booked for robbery in connection with the 7-Eleven flash robberies. And on September 29th, a similar situation occurred in 77th, where the parent turned the child in, and that juvenile was also booked for robbery. Through interviews of the parents and organized retail crime task force, discovered that many of the juveniles involved are not from the neighborhoods where the crimes have occurred. The investigation is ongoing to identify additional suspects and the use of anonymous tips, as well as identifications of school police. More arrests are anticipated. And lastly, I'll go over crime for the week of September 28th. For the offense count for the 4-week period of September 1st through September 28th, compared to the 4-week period of August 4th through August 31st, combined persons and property crimes are down 7.9%. Person crimes are down 1.7%. Regarding our homicides, compared to 2023, the city has seen a year-to-date decrease of 6.6% in homicides. That represents 16. Compared to 2022, the city has seen a 27.9% decrease in homicides. That represents a total of 87. Citywide, of the 224 homicides year-to-date, 79 or 35% of those are gang-related. And for the comparison in 2023, 50% of the 241 homicides were gang related. And in 2022, 54% of the homicides were gang related. Gang related homicides are down 33.1% year to date compared to 2023 and 52.4% compared to 2022. Victim shot analysis, year to date victim shot is down 14% compared to 2023, down 27% compared to 2022. For the past 4 weeks ending September 28th, there's been a decrease of 10% in victim shot. Aggravated assaults for the past 4 weeks ending September 28th, aggravated assaults are down 0.2% compared to the prior 4 weeks ending 8/31. Regarding robberies, for the past 4 weeks ending 9/28, robberies are down 4.4% compared to the prior 4 weeks ending September 31st. There have been 378 strong arm robberies for the 4 weeks, and there have been 136 robberies with a firearm, or 21% of the robberies for the past 4 weeks. Firearms recovered is down 9% year to date through August 31st. Regarding our burglaries, for the past 4 weeks ending in 9/28, burglaries are down 9% compared to the prior 4 weeks. For the past 4 weeks, commercial burglaries are down 10%, and residential burglaries are down 8%. The areas of Encino and Brentwood are still seeing the successes of the deployment of Metropolitan Division as well as commercial crimes. And finally, with our regarding our personnel strength, as of September 30th, 2024 is at 8,780. We are 47 above our sworn authorities of 8,733. Civilian staffing is at 2,626. We're 1 over on our civilian staffing authority of 2,625. And our reserve officer strength is at 378. That is my report.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions or comments regarding the Chief's report? Vice President Shields?
Thank you, President Southers, and thank you, Chief, for the report. It's really, you started off with some very tragic incidences that started off with grand theft auto or auto thefts and led to some very unfortunate, situations with innocent victims being killed. And so it's tragic to hear that. I hope that the department will be doing more to ensure the safety of our streets. I want to also call out the MTA hijacking and how tragic of an incident that was, but very grateful for the men and women of Southeast and the SWAT team. And really, major thanks to the MTA operator who really, in such, most difficult of circumstances, kept his cool and was able to alert law enforcement. And really, his actions really should be commended for making a bad situation as best as it could be. Wanted to also thank you for the updates on the flash mob robberies. It is interesting to hear that parents themselves were active in getting their children to be held accountable for those and to face consequences. That's good to hear, and hopefully that will just deter them and lead them on the better path. I also wanted to, I think in news reports, also mention the fact that the Pico Robertson shooter, the person who shot at 2 Jewish people outside synagogues, was sentenced to 35 years in prison yesterday. Thank you to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's leadership, and also for all of the work that the department did to make sure that that person was held accountable. And I think now, of all times, we should be emphasizing the fact that there is no tolerance for hate crimes in the city of Los Angeles against anyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Shields. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. Good morning. Chief, follow-up question on the 3 sets of parents or parents that turned in their son or daughters. Is there any connection to that? Was there some kind of uniform effort with those parents, or were they all separate?
They appear to be separate, but I do believe that with all the publicity that we use the media on the flash mobs, that the parents had seen that and decided that the right thing to do was to bring the child in. There's other people that are involved because these groups are fairly large, so we're still taking tips in, and hopefully we'll get more information regarding individuals that are engaging in the flash mob. And then I think with the publicity and the identification of people, then I think we'll hopefully see a decrease in this type of activity, especially when they realize that actually people are being identified and are arrested.
And in situations like this, or in cases like this, is there sort of an alternative approach when that happens to what occurs to the youth involved? So maybe referring them to a program, or getting them and their parents some support so that they don't face potentially a legal consequence, but it's more of a restorative.
Yeah, that's definitely part of our protocol. We'll look at the youth and any criminal history, if not, sometimes referring them to services, and that type of thing is more productive than actually putting them in the justice system. So all that will be worked into the investigation and our partnership with our district attorney and city attorney.
Thank you.
Chief, just to follow up on the ADW at 74th and Figueroa, where 6 people were shot, a little bit more in that location. I believe you mentioned that was a homeless encampment.
They had mentioned that there was a homeless encampment there, but they don't believe that was actually related, or that was the intended target of the shooting. 77th is looking at video right now and still has some interviews to do right now. It doesn't look like it's gang related, so there's still a lot of questions as to why they were targeted, but 77th has been working on that and gathering other evidence to figure out what the motive is and follow up on vehicles that were seen in the area, hopefully on CCTV and things like that.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 2, public comment period. Madam Secretary, please call the first speaker.
First up, we have Andrew Graebner.
The chief's report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If the chief's report exceeds 3 minutes, we should be able to match the amount of time the chief takes. Regardless of how long the chief takes, everyone should be able to speak both in person and on the phone. Once again, you're talking about crime being down, but for some reason you need more money. Why do you need more money if crime's down? It seems like crime's down, so maybe we need less of you. You get your $3 billion a day and you can't even keep the power fully up in the bathrooms over here. We have, but yeah, talk about the metro incident. And one thing that was left out is how just incompetent, terrible the cops were. It took them over an hour to actually do anything. That was said in the Metro board meeting last Thursday. You left that out of the report here. So they aren't even good at whatever they're supposed to be doing. You also mentioned, this name is a solution. You also mentioned how you have no tolerance for hate crimes. Even though you have tons of tolerance for hate crimes, and just stood by while pro-Palestinian protesters are attacked. It also reminds me of, you remember the whole thing at Sataquay Elementary last year where the cops stood by and let a bunch of anti-LGBTQ bigots assault, attack, harass LGBTQ activists, the allies, just students at the school. They just wouldn't help the white supremacist fascists and such that just go around to every part of the county to do anti-LGBTQ protesters. They'll do whatever they want. But how dare the anti-LGBTQ activists protest them? They got to be brutalized, and cops got to stand around and do nothing while the anti-LGBTQ bigots assault an unhoused person. That was all at Sataquay Elementary, by the way. Here we have the consent agenda. Let's see. It's not a lot on the consent agenda today. There's only 5 items. I gotta pull it up here. Let's see. We have we have internet crimes. We have $500,000 for an LOG subscription or whatever the heck that is. We have $17.50 for the teenage indoctrination cadet program, so some cops can sexually assault some more teenage women. We got a huge vacation for Troy to go attend something in Huntington Beach. $1,100 for a 3-night hotel stay.
Next, we have Mona M.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Please listen to this true scenario. There's a confessional security check, a sec check. That equals a 12-year-old counseling a grown man. A sec check is because something went wrong in your life and you are trying to discover what you did currently or in a past life to make it happen. The prelude to this confessional are these words spoken to the grown man, and I quote, "We are about to begin an HCO confessional. While we cannot guarantee you that matters revealed in this list will be held forever secret, we can promise you faithfully that no part of it nor any answer you make here will be given to the police or the state. No Scientologist will ever bear witness against you in court." Here are some actual questions from this confessional. I quote, "Have you committed a crime? What crime? How, when, where? Give detail. Have you masturbated?" Remember, this is a child asking a grown man. "How, when, where? In detail. Have you eaten a human body? How, when, where? Give detail." Sadly, the child asking the grown man must know what these words mean. They have to define, explain, and show what the words mean during their training. Remember, this is grown men are told that these crimes will not be told to the police, and the grown man is locked in a room with just that child. All sessions are written about, taped, and videoed. Abuse such as this goes on daily behind the blue walls. Children and survivors of this are not allowed by Scientology doctrine to report it to the police. This doctrine and policy was recorded in court proceedings at the Masterson trial. I am requesting a meeting with the Major Crimes Unit to file an investigation for an aggregate abuse claim. I shouldn't have to make an OIG complaint for this response. Chief Cho, crime solving isn't going to wait for the new chief. Please give me contact info, and I yield back my time. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Hassan Tran.
Good morning, everybody. My name Hassan Tran. I am here today. Please help me put my name in U.S. government system, telling to them I'm here today. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Kenny.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I hear the police asking for more funds, but have you ever considered that the taxpayers' money is being wasted on over probably the 20 false SWATs that y'all been called involving the Scientology protesters? That's a waste of funds, especially when it's being told to y'all that it's coming from a select few that continue to brag about it on their YouTube channel. Also, I don't see any kind of action being taken against Scientology for whatever reasons. People can't come out and run and leave Scientology like that. It's just not easy to escape a cult. They scared, they don't have nowhere to go, Scientology corrupts their mind thinking that they don't have anything outside that blue building. And to just sit there and hear about this and not do anything about it, but y'all waste time on coming to false, bogus calls that Scientology's making, wasting once again taxpayers' money for bogus false calls, making false arrests that's cost protesters thousands of dollars, for attorneys. It's all the way down to corruption in the courtroom. It's not fair because somebody wants to speak out against a cult that they get what they call fair games, meaning they'll stalk down their family, harass their family through mail, whatever way they can to humiliate anybody that speaks out against Scientology. But y'all, once again, asking for more funds to come make false arrests and false swattings against the people who are protesting. It seems one-sided, and I just don't see how nobody don't see that it's one-sided. The world is watching how corrupt LAPD has been treating the protesters of Scientology. Just because they can't say anything, it's going on in there. They're afraid. They don't have security around there just for the protesters. It's to make sure they don't run. Scientology is a cult. They're building tunnels. Nobody's saying anything. It's a tunnel boss and kids can't consent. Please open your eyes and help us. We need some kind of investigation into what's going on, even if it's stop harassing the protesters, because that's what's actually going on. Thank you. I yield my time.
Okay, next we have Mr. Herman.
Brown Act violation. Mr. Django and Mr. Inspector General, you gotta stop calling my fucking name on a card because you're putting me in danger of those fucking Scientology people. I don't need those fucking bitches up my ass with their Scientology bullshit. Fucking racist piece of shit, trash. So let's go into the foundations of money. How Fabian Garcia is not reporting what he's receiving in potential donations. And from what I heard, there's a possibility that he likes young men, but I'm not going to say that on record, but that's an allegation I heard. Sorry about that. But again, we got the Los Angeles cadet program, and you know what I've always said about cadets, Mr. President, that we shouldn't be fucking children. Children are children. They're to be protected. They're little motherfucking angels to God. And God protects children, but at the same time, God destroys goddamn children. Ain't that irrelevant? Not. Because the truth is, God hates you, you're going to hell. Dumb motherfuckers. Keep your dick in your pants and leave children alone. Those are the consent items. And by the way, is Russia still receiving her oil donations? I want to know. I want a donation list of what motherfucking assholes are donating money to rich bitch motherfucker cunt like you, when we know for a fact that Jose Weezer was getting donation money. We know Mitchell Englander was getting donation juju money. So there's something tricky about this, Dickie. And regarding the tragic events, I heard the vice president say, tragic events, that's not tragic. They're everyday motherfucking things happening in this world that are out of control. I'm dealing with crime, sir.
Excuse me. Please sit down with the sign or walk out.
I don't have a sign.
I'm not talking to you.
Oh, that's Ms. Rocha. She wants an accommodation. She can't
Put the sign on the ground.
I don't see a sign. She's cool like that.
As long as you're not blocking someone's view.
Sorry about that, Ms. Rocha.
Sir, please continue your public comment.
Motherfucker. Yeah, I'm going to continue about the tragic events because your vice president is talking about all this fucking bullshit, but yet we got a fucking councilwoman, a fucking ramen noodle birria of that 4th district with those fucking mansions. Tear the fucking mansions down. Tear the fucking mansions down. We don't need that kind of crime in our Hollywood
finish his public comment.
We do not need.
Please allow him to finish his public comment.
Fuck I have to talk over this
Your
young
first
fucking
warning for
bitch when I'm
disrupting the
trying to
meeting.
myself about the mansion crimes. We got to get rid of this shit. Tear them down, put a lien on the property, send the fucking property owners their liens on top of all the costs and charges that we motherfucking white niggers are paying for. We're tired of this shit. And by the way, when Blake Chow was in out there in Hollenbach, he goddamn know well what Weezer was doing behind closed doors, and I goddamn know fucking Weezer was doing it to me too. Fuck the little bitch, and I hope he does good in jail. Fuck you.
Next, we have Mike C.
Okay. Good morning, all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I don't generally have a problem with the police funding their operation, but under the Freedom of Information Act, the LAPD should be a little more forthcoming with who these donations are coming from. We can't have special interest groups steering public safety, and that's kind of what's going on. Speaking on hate crimes, how about our mayor spearheading the illegal tearing down of nearly 100-year-old Catholic statue and the theft of our park? Well, the LAPD sat back and didn't do anything. I probably never told them to do nothing. It's ridiculous. And then let's not just hope, but use our voices and our First Amendment rights to convey to Mayor Bass that choosing the chief of police, she must use meritocracy as the only criteria if she expects to convey any level of trust in her leadership. Anything less will just validate the opinion that Mayor Bass is ineffective and, dare I say, a DEI hire, which we already know she is. And, that's the prevailing opinion anyway. And what I will use to prove Mayor Bass is she's extremely partisan, and our direct involvement in this in the scourge of presentism going on, proof that she had that statue torn down or was okay with it. Just like tearing down all the statues all over the country of different political leaders they don't like. Since 2015, they've been doing it. 10 years of this Marxist juggernaut that seems to be getting steam here in California. The source being the CCP and the Maoist proxies in our government, local and state. In our one-party rule state of California. I mean, one of the worst places to be seems to be Los Angeles. I have family that live in other states, and they look at our state and they go, "What's going on with California?" And I go, "Hey, don't worry. It's the model for your state. Get ready for it." They know it is. California's the model for all of the disasters going on in our country. We have a disaster of a governor, a disaster mayor, and we look at all the other opportunities going on here for police chief. Well, we're guaranteed to get a DEI for that one. I mean, what's going on with this place? Bunch of crazy people. Anyway, I yield my time.
Okay. Next, we have Megan.
I'm sorry, Southers. You are a coward. You are a coward. I watched you have Matios Kadan escorted out of the community meeting in the spring because he was talking about your Islamophobia and your part in the decision to remove the USC valedictorian because she was Muslim. You escorted him out for that because he was off topic. But this guy gets up here and calls Rasha a cunt, and that's super on topic. I've also watched her interrupt people to defend you and tell them to be quiet and tell them that they're off topic. And you don't do shit. You're a coward. So today you're going to talk about whether or not the killing of Earl Collier was in policy. I watched the critical incident video. So the first footage you show is of Earl in the middle of the street. It's clear that he's not well. He's stumbling around. He's disoriented. He's in the middle of the street. And then we see him try to open the car door of a car leaving the intersection. And I think that showing that specific clip was on purpose to reinforce the idea that Earl was this dangerous black man who would have hurt someone had you not shot him. I'm curious to know what other camera footage would show of Earl before the incident, and if it would give a more complete and unbiased view of his condition. He then takes a kitchen knife out of his pocket and starts stumbling down the street. Then the lady on the video narrates the entire incident to tell you how to think about it before we're actually shown it. And she says, Officers approached Collier and began giving him verbal commands to drop the knife. And now that's a hell of a lot calmer than what they actually did, which was to roll up on him with multiple squad cars and get out, guns drawn, shouting at him to drop the knife. I wonder why that further confused and disoriented, and I wonder why he started running. Okay, then the broad says, in an effort to de-escalate the situation, officers discharged two 40-millimeter less lethal foam projectile rounds at him, which were ineffective. What a fucking sentence that is. First, to suggest that shooting something at someone can somehow de-escalate a situation. And then that last part of the sentence, which were ineffective, really, really old racist trope there, right? It kind of gives the impression Earl's unstoppable, out of control, just straight out of the white supremacy handbook. Then it describes him as running east towards pedestrians, again giving the impression he was like charging at people to stab them, when the footage clearly shows a disoriented man scared and fleeing for his life. And then some officers cut him off. He's running. You can see the look on his face. They're yelling at him, and then they shoot him, and they call that charging at them. He was not charging at them. He was having a mental health crisis. He was confused. He didn't know what to do. Nowhere in that video did anybody say, do you need help? Do you need assistance? At any point.
Thank you.
Next, we have Betty Lane.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first I want to thank Blake for his report. It was very good. He does a good job. I also want to support all the donations on the agenda items. Plus, Blake, as acting chief right now, you have the authority to give recommendations to the Board of Rights to save the jobs for the captain and lieutenant in question. And I think Dominic is still a pain in my butt. He does not deserve to retire. He needs to be fired. He's very disappointing. He needs to find his big boy pants. And with that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Next, we have Raul Macias.
Good morning, Assistant Chief Chow and Commissioners. As you well know, I'm a big fan of Robert Kennedy, and he said the following: every society gets the kind of criminal it deserves. What is equally true is that every community gets the kind of law enforcement it insists on. Ladies and gentlemen, the Northeast Division is a disgrace to law enforcement. I want the firings of the following two gentlemen. That's Officer Cortez, who's a thug, okay, and also the so-called, this guy, I guess he's running Mac, his name is Matthew Eddy. He lied in this email. I'll just read briefly. Good morning. As mentioned before in my previous email, that is a lie. He's never contacted me. I researched your allegations. Can I name my landlady who's being abused? Can I name her name? Can I say her name? Okay, I'll just say landlady. I researched your allegations of abuse involving your landlady, and it appears the LAPD, what a joke, and Adult Protective Services have already investigated these claims on several occasions. That is a damn lie. I'm the one who sent them over there to the house to interview my landlady. Those jackasses came in there, and I was in the bedroom. I said, hey, you gonna interview me? You gonna interview Mike Moya, who's probably behind this, who works for mental health, who set up this lady because she wanted to kick him out of the house? No. They asked my landlady, are you okay? Fine. Good night. We're going to close the case. That's what they did. Okay. I want this bastard fired, Matthew Eddy. I've sent him follow-up information. On Wednesday, the 25th, my landlady disappeared for 4 days and her goddamn daughters wouldn't tell me where she was. The following day, the 26th, I had the LAPD come out, the Keystone Cops, and that's Cortez. I want him fired because when he first showed up, he has that strobe right in my face. Okay. I said, "Oh, Cortez." Yeah. I said, "You thug." Okay. I'm going to report you to the commission what you're doing, pal. He says, "I want a wellness check. I want you to talk to Soyon, the daughter of my landlady, and know where the fuck she is. Where did she go?" She jumped in the car and took off for 4 days. When she returned on Saturday, she told me nothing. I said, "Where were you, ma'am?" I detailed her Venza. I found a number belonging to a nefarious sounding black woman up in Oregon. She sounded like a madam. She had her on the front burner right there. When I was detailing, I said, "Who the hell is this?" I called her. I says, "Listen, lady, how the hell are you affiliated with my landlady? You sound like a hooker, man. Who are you?" She slammed the phone on me. She refused to answer. I gave that number to Eddie. That jackass didn't even call me back. Okay. What Cortez did is a disgrace to law enforcement. He had me mentally evaluated. Can you believe this shit? He got more smart. Is that these two clowns that came out, those Chicanos? Do you want to hurt yourself, Ro? You idiot. I want you to.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Steve Riley.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Let me repeat that. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. That is a quote from Aldous Huxley, author of the book Brave New World. What we need is a brave new chief. Where is the chief? We're not told, new chief, by the mayor that we would have a chief by the end of the month. This is October 1st. Okay, that's not inspiring confidence. If you say something, mean it and do it. So we are waiting anxiously for a new chief, and we need a brave new chief. Now, what do the police commission, Mayor Bass, Vice President Kamala Harris, the board czar, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, and Attorney General Merrick Garland have in common? They don't enforce the rule of law, boundaries or borders. And that is a problem. When you don't enforce the law, you get more crime. When there are no consequences for crime, you get more crime. Now, Chief Chow reported that property crime is down 7.5%. That's reported property crime, reported. And let's go back to Prop 47, the law, because what Prop 47 did, what Prop 57 AB 109 did, was basically, what did it do? It made theft rampant. Now, Prop 47 was sold to the public as the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. Sounds good, doesn't it? Who could be against safe neighborhoods and schools? Prop 47 is designed to ensure that prison spending is focused on offenders who commit violent crimes like rape and child molestation. The savings from prison population reductions will be invested in crime prevention programs. Where are those crime prevention programs? Can anyone tell me? Have they prevented crime? The answer is no. Now, these things have real consequences. Do you know, breaking news here, breaking news, Macy's on 7th Street in downtown Los Angeles will be closing. Target will be closing. And do you know why? Because of rampant theft. They cannot stop the tide of theft. And why? Because of Prop 47, who was brought to you by Attorney General Kamala Harris, who put the title on that proposition, misleading the public and lying about what it actually would do. So now you can go into a store and steal up to close to $1,000, and there are no penalties, no consequences. Before it was $400. Arrests were actually made. There's petty theft with a prior, 666 of the Penal Code. Look it up. Okay, so we now have a society, a city, and a state where there are no consequences for theft. Businesses will be closing, people will be losing their jobs, and people will not be able to go shopping in those areas. Something has to be done. God bless the LAPD.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jamie Cusick.
Okay, first I'll address closed session item A1. An off-duty cop saw someone outside his house on a security camera who was wearing a mask. he came out of his house and shot at this unidentified person. Thank God they were able to get in their vehicle and escape, and thank God they remain unidentified, because if they weren't, I'm sure they would have been arrested. Their crimes would have been for being outside of a house and for wearing a mask. They are alive only because this officer was too incompetent to hit them when he shot at them. Okay, moving on to closed session item A2, the attempted murder of Earl Collier. As Megan so effectively spelled out just now for you buffoons, the body cam footage captured by your own department tells a clear story of a man in a mental health crisis who was kettled, hunted, and shot down like the animal that these racist, cowardly motherfuckers perceived him to be from the moment before they were called to the scene. For most of the footage shot in the interior of one of the cop cars, there's a message that says, no audio capture during 2-minute buffer period. How fascinating. With $8 million to spend every day, somehow LAPD's audio on their body camera footage requires 2 minutes to buffer. I'm sure that those 2 minutes were full of racist, violent invective directed at Mr. Collier. I think that as Megan so clearly elucidated, body camera footage is the idea of body cams themselves. It's worse than a waste of money. It's a way to retroactively validate all of the actions taken by LAPD by tampering with the footage. The cops were called to the scene about Mr. Collier on a 4:15, disturbing the peace. It's the cops, of course, who can be seen as the people who are clearly disturbing the peace while Mr. Collier is walking down the road in a mental health crisis. It really begs the question what peace he might be disturbing. This part of downtown 7th and Broadway is patrolled constantly by LAPD. There's no peace there to disturb. It is a site of colonization and of violence. It is a militarized zone, a battleground on which LAPD serves the interests of white wealth and white property by terrorizing poor and unhoused folks and people of color. I want to end by just reading from Earl's mother's GoFundMe. Hello, my name is Sharon Revels. As a disabled mother relying on Social Security benefits, I am at my wit's end financially.
Thank you.
Next,
Madam Secretary, please call the next speaker. Your public comment time has expired. Step away from the podium. Your public comment time has expired. Step away from the podium. Thank you.
Bob
Good morning.
Minton, you're on.
Good morning, board. Are you able to hear me?
Good morning. Yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Henry Marini, and I have been one of the critics of Scientology publicly. I have come before this board before, and I am here again to plead with this board, frankly, for my life and for the life of another public critic of Scientology. His name is Solomon Sassoon. He's a child. He has been repeatedly sexually stalked, harassed, and outright threatened violence upon by a known Scientologist. And not only that, but a Scientologist who specifically does not have any sort of remorse when making sexual stalking threats against a minor. Anthony D'Amato Jr. has a restricted restraining order against him. He repeatedly has been directly linked as being one of the people explicitly calling these swatting calls on any public critic of Scientology. I've had guns pointed at me. I come to you from the great state of New York when I was protesting Scientology in the city of Buffalo, New York, where Scientology has one of their main centers. Officers responded to Code 3. About 10 minutes later, another gentleman here in Los Angeles who was protesting Scientology by the name of Scott Hochstetter, you'll know his YouTube channel as DOA, Defender of Ants. He was swatted about 5 times. He too had guns pointed at him. We know who the swatter is. Scientology is a gang. They are a violent criminal gang unit. They will stop at nothing to harass, intimidate, and outright issue death threats upon anybody that dares speak out publicly. I've had my family be issued death threats, people planning to kill or eat my dog. In addition, Solomon and his family continue to get threats of rape, raping a child, raping his mother, blowing up his house, swatting his house. And I'm just not sure, when this board will finally take up action against the clear violence that Scientology is enacting upon any of its public critics. I'm not sure if that day might come when a child's blood is on your hands, when an entire family in New York is killed for simply having the audacity to publicly exercise their First Amendment right to speak out against Scientology. I just hope it doesn't get to that point. But you have a Scientologist actively thinking to rape a child and calling swatting calls. It's Scientology. They are a vicious criminal gang, and you need to take action. Protect the protesters and stop this nonsense. Stop the bloodshed. You don't want a child's blood on your hands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Hamid Khan.
Wanted to talk about a couple things. One is that when we walked in, Blake Chow was giving all the crime reports, and it's reminiscent and constantly a reminder that how and the frequency of these and what's the get down and what's the setup. Because about a year ago, the big thing, or a year and a half ago, was the real-time crime center being set up and advanced, and more money invested in record management systems. Then getting about 10,000 cameras, getting all the retail shops and all of that. But the goal was really to go after Prop 47. It was to create this specter of violence and people just running wild. And yes, things were going on, but things have always been going on, nothing special about it. However, it was really a conspiracy to then uplift Prop 36 to completely gut anything. But this was through a Supreme Court decision to reduce prison population back in 2012, 2013, that Prop 47. And we've seen every year changes that were going on because it saved hundreds of millions of dollars, that how money was being diverted. But that's how this whole sensationalism of policing is set up. To go after these policy programs. And as we've got to stay vigilant, because the same thing is happening, and I don't know if this commission even has a clue. What we are talking about is the continuation of what is now known over the last 4 years of data-informed community-focused policing, which came immediately in the aftermath of our fight against predictive policing and dismantling Operation Laser and PredPol. But now, as we are getting all the documents, the same picture is emerging. The same style of policing where, you will hear terms like ACCICs and NEAs, neighborhood engagement area, but all under the guise of SARA projects, which is scanning, analysis, response, and assessment. So all that to say that this smoke and mirror and this whole expansion of policing with just rebranding the same old tired programs, from broken windows to predictive policing to SARA operations to the NEAs, go to the same thing. That the same people are being targeted, the same young people are being stopped, the same FI cards are being filed, now with their social security, their social media handles, and the same operation, just as chronic offender program used to be, is very much in operation as well. So we continue to keep an eye on that, and we continue to expose it. And yes, we continue to organize, but we're going to have to stay vigilant in that and come back, because that's really our fight, and it's a deep fight. And we've got to dismantle this data-informed, community-focused policing bullshit.
Next, we have Serge, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I stand before you today as someone who was stolen by being child trafficked by Scientology from another country, whose innocence was shattered by a system that left kids who could not consent to be role-playing being slaves for Scientology adults who pay for that and get tax write-offs for helping themselves to kids being forced to be slaves. Who of you here in this board wants to defend forcing a child to be role-playing being a child slave is legal? The 13th Amendment of the Constitution you all swore to uphold makes clear that slavery was abolished. Imagine you at the LAPD uphold the right for kids to be used as slaves. Y'all made child slavery legal again. Adults can consent to be slaves if they are getting off on that. No one can help them. It's called consent. No kid can consent to that, period. Who of you wants to pitch to us the kids that were brought from another country to be used as slaves? We're having a religious experience for ourselves. It's called we cannot consent to be used on that role. What is really worse is that the very people tasked with upholding the law with protecting vulnerable kids who cannot defend themselves when exposed to these extreme role plays, so-called Scientology audits, where they are indefensibly subjugated and dehumanized, which no kid could ever consent to, while all you cash Scientology checks to protect those adults, claiming that you're truly pressed about them having a so-called freedom of religion. Felonies and religion are not words that can be interchangeable, are they? Why were our passports as children locked up by Scientology adults? Was that part of practicing a religion, or is that textbook child trafficking a felony? Which one is it? Today, the LAPD stands rightfully accused of willfully turning a blind eye to the systemic child trafficking of kids, which is a felony, not a religious experience for any child. Those felonies that are happening as we speak right now include but are not limited to blaming the kids for getting raped, a word we were not even allowed to use inside the Scientology hotels. Instead, as kids, we were groomed to call it out-to-D, a euphemism to sanitize the criminal acts that Scientology video records and transcribes, all tantamount to obstruction of justice. Yet the LAPD seems fine on obstructing criminal investigations, outsourcing those to foreign kids such as myself who were groomed to do that starting at age 12, groomed to do that with teddy bears and dolls. That is how they normalized it, FYI. You are all paid by the public, sworn to observe and protect. But where were you when we were as kids being abused with full impunity? Where were the LAPD officers who should have been there to stop it? Instead, you choose to protect the corrupt, powerful, consenting adult Scientology abusers that are sycophants and paid proteges of convicted felon L. Ron Hubbard, who, breaking news, is not an American-bred god. He's a convicted felon. You are all part of a system that has enabled them. The reality is this: your paychecks today come from the same people you neglected to protect. You took an oath to serve and protect the people, but instead you serve the interests of those who have silenced us for years so they can keep their unfettered access racketeering scheme, which is all fully illegal. And as of today, fully state-sponsored by the state of California. Even our 7th grade education, which is all we got given the fact that we were trafficked, can categorically denounce this exact illegal abomination. We read the law. Who is actually on our...
Next, we have Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster, Alito, on this one.
Only after a few days of the category use of the force in the prior weeks.
Thank you. That's awesome. So, Earl Collier today, it says that he was hit with less lethal, but he could have been hit with the net gun that I suggested for 6 years, and he would still be alive, and you wouldn't have killed another person, but you didn't listen to me. So you're going down, you're burning. So on June 19th, 2018, not President, but Vice President Johnson was speaking about the flamboyant use of rifles. And then Soboroff chimes in. But the numbers you're going to hear, 213 rounds in 2017 and only 13 rounds in 2016, 73 in 2014, and then 7 in 2005. And this led to the Valentina Peralta getting killed. Jones didn't get prosecuted, didn't listen to command staff either. But here is Vice President Johnson. Here he is sounding the alarm. No one heeded the warning.
The use of using our rifles skyrocketed in 2017. There were 213 rounds. There were 213 rounds fired from rifles in 2017. That number was 13 in 2016 and 73 in 2014, 7 in 2005, I can't even put a percentage on that increase. So I think we also have to revisit our policy on when using a rifle is appropriate. And lastly, there were 9 incidences in 2017 where there were more than 4 shooters in an officer-involved shooting. He raises issues about command and control and whether or not we are properly determining who necessarily needs to be shooting.
Yeah, and this may have led to Valentino Peralta being killed. Everything he said here came to fruition. Who are you listening to? That's why I keep telling you, have to listen to me. I'm not the most powerful man in the world, even though I say I am. I'm trying to be. And I would have saved the life of these people. And then you wouldn't look like a bunch of dumb jerks. That's what I'm trying to get you out of this problem. I have the ability to get you out of this problem, but you won't listen to me. Jackie Lacey. Jackie Layton, a name you haven't heard much, huh? Is she better than Gascon? Right? So, need a beat down? You got to really think about this. If you really did give, everybody that gave to this Leon guy needs a beat down because they were 2 years old. The whole town, the whole district that donates to him needs a beat down. Does that sound right? That doesn't sound right either, does it? Right. He's a jerk.
Next, we have
Thank you.
Susan Rocha.
My name is Susan Rocha and I live in Northeast. This message is especially for the city attorney's office. We need to protect First Amendment for nonviolent protesters. That includes me standing on the corner protesting the noisy Divine Savior Catholic Church, which they have refused to cite, to do anything about. Bullhorns, blasting off-key tape recordings in my house 10 times every single day. Even though there's no church services and not a soul around, you want to continue that for the last, 15 or so years? They would do nothing about it. We have California Penal Code 415. We have city laws, but no, it's okay to disturb my peace and quiet, but if I disturb theirs, oh boy, I'm ready to be arrested. You know what? This church, Divine Savior, has taken me to court 2 times. 2 times they've lost. The second time, did you accuse me of a crime that never happened? And they prosecuted me, even though they had 3 witnesses, including a priest, Albert Prakasam, who never saw anything. 3 people, including the priest, that they put on a stand because they thought I wouldn't fight them, who never saw anything, but they prosecuted anyway. That's how powerful the Catholic Church is. Well, 12 people saw my side and saw the truth, not guilty. But that's cruel to put me through the hell of a trial for something that never happened, just to shut a little old woman up that sits on a corner with a goddamn sign. That's pretty sick that the prosecutor would do that, and you don't do anything about it. And now I'm fighting for my 4th appeal for factually innocent because not guilty is not good enough. I want more. I want factually innocent, but you keep fighting me on my factually innocent case. Don't you have any morals? These people lied. I have proof they lied, and you want to keep fighting me on my factually innocent case, which is on my 4th appeal, because I'm not going to stop. I don't care what they say. I'm not going to stop. I'll keep taking that to the next court and the next court, because that's not right that they can lie and get away with it. I want factually innocent. Stop fighting on my case. Gabriella Taylor, prosecutor Gabriella Taylor at Northeast, why would she prosecute when she ain't got 1 witness? When she ain't got nobody to sign anything because it never happened. Why? Because she could please her priest? Is that why? Is she going to get a special seat in heaven for it? Is that why? That's cruel. That's cruel. The Catholic Church will still get their way to prosecute and do whatever the crap they want, just like they did with the little boys, and they got away with that for all those years. They still, in this city, prosecute for them for no reason. And you're doing the same thing with the protesters from the Scientology that are non-violent. And you're falsely accusing them of crimes that they haven't done. The same crimes they accuse me of. And that's got to stop because we deserve First Amendment.
Thank you.
Right on.
Mr. President, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll now move on to item Number 3, consent agenda items. We have
Okay, sorry for the hairdo, you guys, and the messy, and the sunlight coming in from behind me. Nice meeting. I am so sorry we didn't get into Chicago public safety. I am so sorry. But next week we have police and fire, and I will call the city clerk's office to find out what the heck happened. I don't think that they know how to deal with call-in commenters, but we'll figure it out. I'm sorry, but we tried. And what I'll probably do is rename the video showing that this is it. And then we'll figure it out from there, guys. Okay, I need to go fluff and buff because my hairdo is just really awful today. And go get some fluff and buff done, and I will be back for the 7 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern Time live, because we're going to do this for Salt Lake City. Thanks, you guys. So much love, so many hugs. I am so glad that Serge called in. That was so powerful. Definitely kaboom again. That last lady, I've heard her comment a few times about what the Catholic Church. Not too much fluffing and buffing. Well, we got to do something with the buff and the fluff here because I look a mess. So, love you guys all. I'll talk to you later tonight, and I'll put in another stream notice. So, thank you and have a wonderful, wonderful day.